Little girl refuses to sit. Teacher looks at her belly and calls 911 in panic. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Willow Creek Elementary, casting warm rectangles of light across the colorful carpet where 20 eager kindergartners sat in a circle for story time. Rachel Morgan, with her silver-streaked auburn hair and kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled, had been teaching at this school for over 30 years. She knew children, their habits, their joys, and most. And, importantly, when something wasn't right. "Everyone find their spot on our reading rainbow," Rachel called cheerfully, watching as the children scrambled to claim their favorite colored sections of the circular carpet, all except one. In the corner stood a small girl with dark hair falling in, tangled waves around her thin shoulders. She wore the same faded blue dress she'd worn every day that week, and her arms were wrapped protectively around a threadbare teddy bear missing one eye. While the other children settled cross-legged on the floor, Isla Thompson remained standing, her gaze fixed somewhere far beyond the classroom walls. "Isla, sweetheart," Rachel said gently, approaching the girl, "would you like to join us on the carpet today?" The child's eyes, large and brown with shadows no 6-year-old should have, flickered briefly to Rachel's face before dropping to the floor. She shook her head, clutching her teddy bear tighter against her chest. Something about that gesture stirred a memory in Rachel. Years ago, her own son Thomas had carried a stuffed dinosaur everywhere after his father left. Children found comfort in constants when their worlds were unstable. "That's a wonderful bear you have," Rachel said, kneeling to Isla's eye level. "Does he have a name?" "Guardian," Isla whispered, so softly Rachel almost missed it. "Guardian, that's a special name for a bear." Isla nodded, her thin fingers stroking the worn fabric of the toy's ear. "He watches while I'm at school." Rachel felt a slight chill despite the warm September air. "Watches what, sweetheart?" But Isla had retreated back into silence, her eyes once again distant. Throughout story time, Rachel found her attention drawn repeatedly to the small figure standing in the corner. While other children giggled at the funny parts of Where the Wild Things Are, Isla remained stone-faced. When they roared their terrible roars and gnashed their terrible teeth, she flinched at the sudden noise. After dismissing the children to their activity tables, Rachel reviewed Isla's file. Transferred mid-summer. From another district, emergency contact form incomplete. No participation in the free breakfast program despite obvious need. 3 missed Monday mornings already this semester. Rachel's fingers traced the edges of the folder as she recalled her principal's words during last week's staff meeting. "We're educators, not social workers. There are protocols for these situations." But protocols hadn't helped Tyler Peterson 10 years ago, a boy with similar haunted eyes whose file Rachel had flagged repeatedly until he suddenly transferred schools. She still wondered what had happened to him, still woke sometimes remembering his drawings of dark closets and empty refrigerators. At lunch, Rachel noticed Isla carefully wrapping half her sandwich in a napkin before slipping it into her pocket. When their eyes met, Isla froze, fear washing over her small features. "It's okay," Rachel said softly. "I sometimes save food for later, too." As the children lined up for recess, Rachel gently touched Isla's shoulder. The girl looked up, and for a brief moment, something like trust flickered in her eyes. "He said it wouldn't hurt," Isla whispered suddenly, her voice small but clear. "Who said that?" "Isla?" But the moment had passed. Isla clutched Guardian tighter and joined the line of children heading outside, leaving Rachel with a growing knot of concern in her stomach and the certainty that something in Isla Thompson's world was terribly wrong. The following morning, Rachel arrived at school. Earlier than usual, she arranged a special corner in her classroom with extra pillows and books, hoping to create a space where Isla might feel comfortable. Through the window, she watched the yellow school buses pull up one by one, scanning for the small figure with the blue dress and teddy bear. Isla arrived last, walking alone rather than taking the bus. Her hair was uncombed and dark circles shadowed her eyes as if she hadn't slept. When she entered the classroom, Rachel noticed she walked with a slight hesitation, one hand pressed against her stomach. "Good morning, Isla," Rachel said, warmly. "I saved a special spot for Guardian by my desk if you'd like." The girl's eyes widened slightly at the recognition of her bear's name, but she only nodded and moved to her usual corner, still standing. During art time, Rachel gave the children a simple assignment. Draw your home and the people who live there. She moved between tables, praising colorful houses with stick-figure families and pets. When she reached Isla's desk, she paused. Unlike the bright pictures around her, Isla's drawing showed a small gray house with peeling paint. Inside were 3 small figures, no adults. The smallest figure was in what looked like a box. "Can you tell me about your picture, Isla?" Rachel asked gently. Isla's hand quickly moved to cover the drawing. "It's nothing," she whispered, but her eyes darted nervously to Rachel's face. "Who are these people in your drawing?" "Just people who need looking after," Isla said, before carefully folding the paper and slipping it into her pocket. At lunch, Rachel observed as Isla once again saved half her food, this time tucking an apple and part of her sandwich carefully into her backpack. When she thought no one was watching, she also took an extra milk carton from the cafeteria counter. That afternoon, Rachel wrote a note requesting a parent-teacher meeting and slipped it into Isla's take-home folder. It was the 3rd such note this month. The previous 2 had gone unanswered. "Isla," Rachel said as the children prepared to leave, "is your mom or dad able to come talk to me sometime? I'd love to meet them." Something like panic flashed across the child's face. "They're busy," she said, looking at the floor. "Really busy." Back in her empty classroom, Rachel dialed the phone number on Isla's registration form. Like her previous attempts, it went straight to a disconnected message. She pulled out the school directory and called Melissa Clark, the school's social worker. "I've been meaning to stop by about Isla," Melissa said when Rachel explained her concerns. "Let me check what we have on file." The next day, Isla didn't raise her hand once during morning lessons. During group reading, she stood even farther from the circle than usual. At recess, while other children played, she sat alone under a tree, whispering to her teddy bear. Rachel approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. As she got closer, she could hear Isla's words, "Just 2 more hours, then we can go home and check on them. You have to be brave, Guardian." "Isla?" Rachel asked. "Who does Guardian need to check on?" The little girl's head snapped up, eyes wide with alarm. "No one," she said quickly, too quickly. "It's just a game." When the last bell rang, Rachel watched from her classroom window as Isla hurried away from school, moving with purpose despite her obvious fatigue. The child's backpack bulged with what Rachel now suspected were food items saved from lunch. Later that evening, while grading papers, Rachel found a folded drawing that had fallen from Isla's desk. It showed the same 3 small figures, but this time with more detail. The smallest was clearly a baby. Beside them, a larger figure lay on what appeared to be a bed, eyes closed. Rachel felt the knot in her stomach tighten. Tomorrow she decided she would speak with the principal, protocols or not. "I understand your concerns, Rachel, but we need to be careful about overstepping boundaries," Principal Harriet Davis said, adjusting her glasses as she reviewed Isla's file. "The last time a teacher made accusations without solid evidence, the district faced a lawsuit." Rachel gripped her coffee mug tighter. "I'm not making accusations, Harriet. I'm reporting observations. The same clothes every day, hoarding food. That drawing with 3 children alone. And have you noticed her stomach? It seems swollen. Children often have imaginary siblings, and stomach issues could be anything." The principal closed the folder with a sigh. "Follow protocol. Document your observations, try contacting the parents again, and if they don't respond by next week, Melissa can make an official inquiry." Walking back to her classroom, Rachel felt the weight of memory press down on her shoulders. 10 years ago, a similar conversation about Tyler Peterson had ended the same way. By the time protocol had run its course, Tyler had disappeared from the school system entirely. The image of his empty desk still haunted her. Not time, Rachel whispered to herself. When her students arrived, Rachel noticed immediately that Isla looked worse than the day before. Her blue dress had a new stain, and she winced slightly when her backpack brushed against her middle. During calendar time, while the children sat in a circle calling out days of the week, Rachel knelt beside Isla, who remained standing as usual. "Sweetheart, are you feeling okay today? Your tummy looks uncomfortable." Isla took a small step back, arms tightening around Guardian. "I'm fine," she murmured, but her eyes betrayed her pain. "You know you can tell me if something's wrong, right?" Rachel kept her voice low and gentle. "That's what teachers are for." For a moment, something flickered in Isla's expression, a desperate need to trust battling with fear. Then the shutters came down again. "Nothing's wrong," she said, turning away. Throughout the morning, Rachel tried different approaches to connect with Isla. She paired her with gentle Emma during partner reading. She made sure Isla received an extra helping at snack time. She even brought out a small sewing kit and offered to repair Guardian's loose arm while Isla watched. While Rachel stitched the bear's worn seam, she spoke casually. "I had a little boy once, my son Thomas. He had a dinosaur named Rex that went everywhere with him. Rex was the keeper of all his secrets." Isla's eyes widened slightly. "Guardian keeps secrets too." "Important secrets?" The little girl nodded, then looked around as if she'd said too much. "Sometimes," Rachel continued, carefully knotting the thread, "keeping too many secrets can make our hearts heavy and our bodies tired. But sometimes you have to," Isla whispered. "If you tell, bad things happen." Rachel handed the repaired bear back to Isla. "What bad things are you worried about, sweetheart?" Isla clutched Guardian to her chest. "They'll take them away," she said, so softly Rachel barely heard. "They'll separate us." Before Rachel could respond, the lunch bell rang, and Isla retreated to her corner. Conversation closed. That afternoon, Rachel found Isla asleep in the classroom library corner during quiet reading time, something that had never happened before. The little girl's face was pale, her breathing shallow. Even in sleep, one arm protectively cradled her swollen middle. As Rachel gently placed a small blanket over her, Isla stirred slightly, murmuring in her sleep, "Don't worry, I'll be back. Someone has to listen." Rachel watched the exhausted child and made a decision. Protocol would have to wait. Tomorrow she would speak with Melissa directly and insist on immediate action. Whatever Isla was protecting, whatever secret Guardian was keeping, the little girl couldn't carry the burden alone much longer. "I've been waiting for you," Melissa Clark said as Rachel entered her small office the next morning. The social worker's desk was covered with open files, her computer screen displaying Isla's school records. "I pulled everything we have on the Thompson family last night." Rachel sank into the chair across from Melissa, grateful that someone else was finally taking Isla's situation seriously. "And? It's concerning," Melissa admitted, pushing her curly hair back from her face. "The address is incomplete, the emergency contacts are outdated, and there's a note that Isla transferred from Oak Ridge Elementary midsummer with minimal documentation. What about her parents?" "That's where it gets complicated. There's only a mother listed, Caroline Thompson. No father on record." Melissa tapped a note in the file. "The mother called once in August to say Isla might miss the first week due to family circumstances. That's the only contact we've had." Rachel's eyes fell on a silver-framed photograph on Melissa's desk. A young man with Melissa's smile, holding a toddler on his shoulders. "Is that your son?" Melissa nodded, her expression softening. "Thomas. And my granddaughter Lily." "My son's name is Thomas too," Rachel said, touching the frame gently. "When he was little, I was working 2 jobs as a single mom. He got the flu once, 102-degree fever, but didn't tell me for 3 days because he knew I couldn't afford to miss work." She looked up at Melissa, her eyes shining with remembered guilt. "He had that same look Isla has, like he's carrying the world on his small shoulders. Melissa reached across her desk and squeezed Rachel's hand. "We'll figure this out, Rachel. I promise." Later that morning, Rachel introduced a new activity to her class. "Today we're making My Family collages," she explained, distributing magazines, scissors, and glue sticks. "Cut out pictures that remind you of your family and the people who take care of you." She moved among the tables, helping students find images, paying special attention to Isla, who worked with unusual focus. Unlike the other children's colorful collages filled with smiling adults and pets, Isla's paper showed only 3 small figures cut from a department store catalog: a girl about her age, a toddler boy, and a baby. "Can you tell me about your family, Isla?" Rachel asked, sitting beside her. Isla hesitated, then pointed to the oldest child. "This one makes sure everyone is okay," she said quietly. Her finger moved to the toddler. "This one needs help tying his shoes." Finally, the baby. "This one cries when he's hungry." "And who takes care of all of them?" Rachel asked gently. Isla's eyes darted around the room before she whispered, "The big one has to. She makes the food and keeps everyone quiet so the neighbors don't hear." A chill ran through Rachel. "Where are the grown-ups in your family, sweetheart?" Isla's face closed like a shuttered window. "I have to finish my project now," she said, turning away. During lunch, Rachel observed Isla carefully wrapping her entire sandwich and apple in napkins. When the cafeteria monitor wasn't looking, she also took 2 milk cartons from the cooler, slipping them into her backpack with practiced stealth. After school, Rachel and Melissa met again to compare notes. During the "Who Takes Care of Me" discussion, she said something about preparing meals herself and taking care of other little people. Rachel explained, "And her stomach definitely seems swollen. Could she be?" "Let's not jump to conclusions," Melissa cautioned. "But yes, I'm concerned too. I've submitted an urgent request to the County Social Services Department for any records they might have on the family." "How long will that take?" "Normally a few days, but I marked it priority." Melissa began gathering her things. "I've also scheduled a home visit for tomorrow afternoon, though with the incomplete address it might be challenging." As Rachel walked to her car that evening, a heavy rainstorm broke over the town. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by a crack of thunder that seemed to shake the school building. Rachel thought of Isla walking home in this downpour, of the food carefully hidden in her backpack, and of the mysterious little people who needed her care. She started her car with sudden determination. Protocol or not, she couldn't wait another day. She would drive through the neighborhoods near school, looking for the little girl in the blue dress. Perhaps she could offer a ride, see where Isla lived, ensure she was safe on this stormy night. As Rachel pulled out of the parking lot, the rain beating against her windshield, she couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The rain pounded mercilessly as Rachel drove slowly through the neighborhood surrounding Willow Creek Elementary. Visibility was poor, and twice she nearly missed turns as she scanned the high sidewalks for a small figure in a blue dress. After 40 minutes of searching, the storm intensified, and Rachel reluctantly headed home, her heart heavy with worry. The next morning broke clear and bright, as if the previous night's storm had never happened. Rachel arrived at school early, anxiously watching the entrance for Isla. When the little girl finally appeared, still in the same blue dress, now clean but clearly damp, Rachel felt a wave of relief followed by renewed concern. The child's face was paler than ever, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "Good morning, Isla," Rachel said gently. "I was worried about you walking home in that storm yesterday." Isla clutched Guardian tighter. "We got wet," she admitted, "but I covered the backpack with my jacket so the food stayed dry." "That was smart thinking," Rachel said, noticing how Isla's free hand unconsciously moved to, her swollen middle. "Is your tummy hurting today?" The little girl shook her head, but her pinched expression told a different story. During morning recess, Rachel found Isla sitting alone under a tree instead of playing. She was whispering to Guardian, her small face intense with concentration. Rachel approached quietly, catching fragments of Isla's one-sided conversation. Just a few more hours, then we'll go check. I know you're tired of watching, but who else can listen for the crying? Rachel sat down on the grass beside her. It sounds like Guardian has an important job, Isla. Jumped slightly, then relaxed when she saw it was Rachel. After a moment of hesitation, she nodded. He's a Guardian. That means he protects people. Who does he protect, Isla? The little girl traced the worn fur on her teddy bear's ear. Everyone at home. He watches while I'm at school, but sometimes, her voice dropped to a whisper, sometimes he gets tired of listening all alone. Rachel chose her next words carefully. It must be hard for Guardian to listen all by himself. Maybe he needs help sometimes. Something shifted in Isla's expression, a flicker of desperate hope quickly, smothered by fear. He can't have help. If grown-ups find out, they'll take everyone away, they'll separate us. Separate who, sweetheart? But Isla had already retreated back into silence, her small shoulders rigid with tension. Later that day, Rachel noticed a small tear in Guardian's arm where the stuffing was beginning to show. Would you like me to fix Guardian's arm during quiet reading time? She offered. I still have my sewing kit. To her surprise, Isla nodded, though she watched anxiously as Rachel gently took the worn teddy bear. As Rachel stitched the torn seam, she spoke softly about her own childhood teddy bear named Cinnamon. Gradually, Isla's rigid posture relaxed, and she moved closer to watch the repair. There, Rachel said, tying off the thread and handing Guardian back. Good as new. Isla ran her fingers over the neat stitches. Thank you, she whispered. For the first time, a ghost of a smile touched her lips. That small moment of connection seemed to shift something between them. When Rachel offered Isla her own cardigan later that afternoon when the classroom grew chilly, the little girl accepted it without her usual wariness. As the final bell approached, Isla lingered at her desk instead of preparing to leave immediately as she usually did. She seemed to be gathering her courage for something. Miss Morgan? She finally asked, her voice barely audible. Yes, Isla. Do you? She swallowed hard, her hands fidgeting with Guardian's ear. Do you know how to make a baby stop crying when he's hungry but there's no more milk? The question struck Rachel like a physical blow. She knelt down to Isla's eye level, struggling to keep her expression calm despite the alarm bells ringing in her mind. Is there a hungry baby at your house? Isla. The little girl's eyes filled with tears. He cries and cries. I tried giving him water with a little sugar, but he just gets madder. And Noah. She stopped abruptly, looking horrified at what she'd revealed. Noah? Is that your brother? Isla backed away, panic replacing the momentary openness. I shouldn't have said anything. Please don't tell, please. Before Rachel could respond, Isla grabbed her backpack and ran from the classroom, leaving Rachel with the first pieces of a puzzle that seemed more urgent by the minute. A baby? Melissa Clark's eyes widened as Rachel, recounted her conversation with Isla. And another child named Noah? That's what she said before she panicked and ran off, Rachel confirmed, pacing the small counselor's office. She's been taking food home, Melissa, and she asked about comforting a hungry baby. I think she's caring for siblings. Melissa frowned at her computer screen. There's nothing in her records about siblings, but that doesn't mean much. The file is clearly incomplete. She tapped a few keys. The address we have is just Maple Street, no number, and the county hasn't responded to my inquiry yet. We can't wait for bureaucracy, Rachel insisted. That little girl is carrying a burden no child should have to bear. I agree, but we need to be careful. If we make a formal report without sufficient evidence, and it turns out to be nothing, we could damage the family unnecessarily. Melissa rubbed her temples. On the other hand, if children are in danger, let me try something, Rachel suggested. I'll start a special reading program where kids can take books home. That gives me a legitimate reason to ask for Isla's complete address. Melissa nodded slowly. That could work, and I'll call the county office again to pressure them about those records. The next morning, Rachel announced the new Books for Bedtime program to her excited class. You'll each choose a book to take home and read with your family, she explained. But I'll need your complete address to register you. When it was Isla's turn to select a book, Rachel noticed she gravitated toward stories about families and siblings. The little girl finally chose The Relatives Came, a tale about a house full of family members taking care of each other. This is a wonderful choice, Isla, Rachel said, preparing the checkout card. I just need your full address to complete the form. Isla hesitated, her fingers tightening around Guardian. I'm not supposed to tell people where we live. Rachel kept her voice casual. It's just for the school records, sweetheart, so we know where to send notes about special events. After a long moment, Isla whispered, 462 Maple Street, the gray house with the broken steps. Rachel wrote down the address, her heart beating faster. Thank you, Isla. I hope you enjoy the book. Later that day, during a gardening activity in the school's small courtyard, Rachel noticed how carefully Isla tended her assigned plant, a small tomato seedling. You're very gentle with the plants, Rachel observed, kneeling beside her. Plants need special care to grow food, Isla explained seriously. I have tomatoes and beans at home too, in pots by the window. You grow your own. Food? Rachel asked, surprised. Isla nodded. The seeds were from Mrs. Winters next door. She showed me how before she moved away. Her small hands patted the soil with practiced precision. Food from the garden is free, and it doesn't run out like the money did. The casual mention of financial hardship made Rachel's chest tighten. It sounds like you know a lot about taking care of things, Isla. I have to, the little girl replied simply. If I don't learn things, I can't teach the others at home. At lunch, Rachel prepared a special table in her classroom with extra portions she'd brought from home. Isla, would you like to have lunch with me today? I made too much food and could use some help eating it. To her surprise, Isla accepted the invitation. Though initially hesitant, the child eventually ate an entire sandwich, an apple, and a yogurt cup, more than Rachel had ever seen her consume. Some color returned to her pale cheeks as she ate, and she even asked for a second glass of milk. After school, Rachel drove slowly down Maple Street, searching for number 462. She found it near the end of the road, a small gray house set back from the street, with sagging front steps and peeling paint. The yard was bare except for a few plastic toys partially hidden behind overgrown bushes. All the windows were covered with faded curtains or sheets, giving no glimpse of life inside. As Rachel watched from her car, a movement caught her eye. Isla appeared around the corner of the house, glancing nervously in both directions before hurrying up the broken steps. She carried her backpack and what looked like a small bag from the neighborhood market. Rachel's instinct was to approach immediately, but something held her back. Rushing in might frighten Isla and destroy the fragile trust they'd built. Instead, she made careful note of the house's condition and surroundings, then drove to meet Melissa with this new information. We have an address now, she told the social worker, and more evidence that something isn't right. The question is, what do we do next? We'll proceed carefully, Melissa said the next morning, reviewing the notes Rachel had made about Isla's house. I've scheduled a formal home visit for Friday afternoon. That gives us 3 days to gather more information and prepare Isla. Rachel nodded, though anxiety gnawed at her. 3 days seemed an eternity when a child, perhaps multiple children, might be in need. In the meantime, Melissa continued, keep building that trust. The more Isla reveals voluntarily, the better we can help her. That day, Rachel launched her Books for Bedtime program with enthusiasm, making a special display of books about families, siblings, and overcoming challenges. When Isla returned, The Relatives Came. Rachel asked if she'd enjoyed it. I read it to Noah, Isla said quietly, her guard momentarily lowered. He liked the part where everyone sleeps together in one room. Does Noah like other stories too? Rachel asked casually. Isla nodded. He always asks for the same story about the 3 pigs, but I make up new parts so it doesn't get boring. You sound like a wonderful storyteller, Rachel smiled. Would you like to choose another book today? As Isla browsed the selection, Rachel noticed other students watching with curiosity. Usually isolated during free choice time, Isla rarely interacted with classmates. "Ms. Morgan," Emma Wilson asked, her freckled face scrunched in confusion, "why does Isla always stand up? Doesn't she get tired?" Before Rachel could intervene, Isla answered in her soft voice, "If I sit down, I might fall asleep, and if I sleep he might cry again. Then no one would hear him." The simple explanation, delivered with such matter-of-fact certainty, rendered Emma speechless. Rachel quickly diverted attention by announcing it was time for their special garden project. Outside in the school's courtyard garden, Rachel had prepared a new activity, planting vegetable seeds in small containers the children could eventually take home. "Today we're learning about food plants," she explained, demonstrating how to prepare the soil. "Who knows how? Vegetables grow?" Several hands shot up, but it was Isla's careful demonstration that captured everyone's attention. Her small fingers worked with surprising skill, creating perfect little holes in the soil at precisely the right depth. "Where did you learn to plant seeds so well, Isla?" Rachel asked. "I watched the gardening show at the library sometimes," Isla explained, "and I tried different ways at home until the plants grew better." She continued working as she spoke, her movements efficient. "The tomatoes need lots of sun, but the lettuce burns if it gets too hot, and you have to check the soil every day because if it dries out, everything dies." Rachel noticed other children listening intently to Isla's impromptu lesson. For perhaps the first time, the little girl was being seen by her classmates as knowledgeable rather than odd. "Would you like to help me show everyone how to water their seeds properly?" Rachel asked. To her surprise, Isla nodded and carefully demonstrated the gentle sprinkling technique she used. "Not too much," she cautioned seriously. "Just enough to make the soil happy." By the end of the garden session, 2 other children had asked Isla questions about their seeds, and she had answered with quiet confidence. It was a small but significant shift in her classroom dynamics. At lunch, Rachel invited Isla to eat in the classroom again. This time she'd prepared a special meal with a variety of healthy options. Isla ate steadily, and with obvious hunger. "I'm glad you like the food, Isla," Rachel said gently. "It's important for growing bodies to get enough to eat." Isla paused mid-bite, her eyes suddenly wary. "We have food at home," she said defensively. "I make sure everyone gets some." "I believe you," Rachel assured her. "You take very good care of your family." Something in Rachel's tone must have conveyed sincere admiration rather than suspicion, because Isla's rigid posture relaxed slightly. "It's hard sometimes," the little girl admitted, her voice barely audible. "Especially when Liam cries at night, and I don't know what he wants." "Liam, is that the baby?" Rachel asked, careful to keep her tone conversational. Isla nodded, then immediately looked alarmed at what she'd revealed. "I shouldn't talk about them." "It's okay to talk to me, Isla," Rachel said softly. "I only want to help. I promise I won't do anything that would separate you from Noah and Liam." For a long moment, Isla studied Rachel's face, as if trying to determine if this adult, unlike others she'd known, could actually be trusted. The weight of that assessment, a child trying to decide if an adult deserved her faith, made Rachel's heart ache. Finally, Isla whispered, "Noah is 4. Liam is just a baby. I have to take care of them until Mom comes back." It was the first direct confirmation of what Rachel had suspected, and it felt like both a victory and a heavy new responsibility. Somewhere in Willow Creek, a 6-year-old girl was acting as the sole caretaker for 2 younger children. "You're very brave, Isla," Rachel said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "But you don't have to do it all alone anymore." She confirmed it. Rachel told Melissa during their after-school meeting. "There are 3 children living alone. Isla, 4-year-old Noah, and a baby named Liam. She mentioned their mother is away but didn't explain where or why." Melissa made rapid notes in Isla's file. "This changes everything. I'm moving the home visit up to tomorrow afternoon instead of Friday. We can't leave 3 young children in that situation any longer than necessary. I'll come with you, Rachel said firmly. Isla trusts me now, at least a little. Having a familiar face might make the visit less frightening for her. That's not standard protocol. Melissa hesitated, then nodded. But these aren't standard circumstances. I'll pick you up after school, around 3:30. That night, Rachel found sleep impossible. Her mind raced with images of 3 small children alone in that gray house, of Isla standing vigilant while her siblings slept, of a baby crying for comfort that a 6-year-old couldn't fully provide. By morning, she had dark circles under her eyes that nearly matched Isla's. The school day passed in a blur of anticipation. Rachel noticed that Isla seemed more relaxed than usual, even participating in group activities without prompting. During circle time, when the class practiced counting by 2s, Gila actually raised her hand to answer a question. At recess, she allowed Emma to show her a caterpillar they'd found near the swings. It was as if her small confession about her siblings had lightened her burden slightly, giving her permission to be a child, at least at school. The change was subtle but unmistakable. Isla's rigid vigilance had softened just enough to let glimpses of a normal 6-year-old peek through. "You seem happy today," Rachel commented during their now regular lunch in the classroom. Isla nodded, carefully spreading peanut butter on her second slice of bread. "Guardian told me you might really help, not like the other grown-ups who just make promises." "What other grown-ups, Isla?" The little girl's expression clouded. "The ones in the white building who took Mom away. They said they'd check on us, but they never came back." Rachel filed this information away to share with Melissa. It sounded like social services had been involved at some point but had somehow lost track of the children. "Well, Guardian is right," Rachel said gently. "I do want to help. In fact, Ms. Clark and I would like to visit your home today after school, just to see how you and your brothers are doing." Panic flashed across Isla's face. "You can't. The house isn't nice like other houses. They'll take us away." "No one wants to take you away from your brothers, Isla," Rachel assured her, though she couldn't honestly promise what might happen once they assessed the children's living situation. "We just want to make sure you have what you need." The child's face scrunched in thought, her inner struggle visible. Finally, she asked in a small voice, "Will you promise not to separate us? No matter what?" The question pierced Rachel's heart. How could she promise something she couldn't control? Yet the fear in Isla's eyes demanded reassurance. "I promise I will do everything in my power to keep you and your brothers together," Rachel said carefully. "That's the most important thing to me, too." Isla studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slightly. "Okay, you can come, but only you and Ms. Clark, no police." "No police," Rachel agreed, relieved at this small victory. "Just us." The afternoon crawled by with excruciating slowness. Rachel had just dismissed her class when her classroom phone rang. It was Melissa, and her voice held unmistakable frustration. "I have terrible news. I've been called to an emergency placement for a teenager in crisis across the county. There's absolutely no one else who can handle it, and it can't wait." "But what about Isla's home visit?" Rachel protested. "It has to be postponed until tomorrow," Melissa said. "Regretfully, I've already notified Principal Davis." "Isla just agreed to let us visit today," Rachel said. "If we change plans now, she might see it as another broken promise from adults. We could lose all the trust we've built." "I understand, but my hands are tied. This is the reality of being understaffed and underfunded." Melissa's voice softened. "Tell Isla we'll come tomorrow for certain. I've cleared my entire afternoon." After hanging up, Rachel sat at her desk, disappointment weighing heavily on her shoulders. She'd have to tell Isla about the change of plans before the child left for the day. But when Rachel looked up, her classroom was empty. Isla had already gone home. The realization struck like a physical blow. Isla had finally opened the door to help, and now that help had been delayed by bureaucracy and staffing shortages. What message would that send to a child who already distrusted adult promises? As Rachel gathered her things to leave, A strange sense of foreboding settled over her. Something about the timing felt wrong, as if they'd missed a crucial window of opportunity. She didn't know then how prophetic that feeling would prove to be. The next morning, Rachel arrived at school early, anxious to explain the postponed visit to Isla. She arranged the classroom with special care, setting out the books they'd read together and placing a small potted tomato seedling on Isla's desk. A gift to show her commitment hadn't wavered. But when the morning bell rang and children filled the classroom, Isla's seat remained empty. "Has anyone seen Isla today?" Rachel asked as she took attendance. The children shook their heads. By lunchtime, Isla still hadn't arrived. Rachel called the office to see if there had been any message about her absence, but there was none. An uneasy feeling settled in her stomach as she dialed Melissa's extension. "She's not here," Rachel said when the counselor answered. "No call, no note. This isn't like her, Melissa. Isla comes to school even when she's clearly not feeling well." "Let's not panic yet," Melissa cautioned. Though concern edged her voice, she might be sick, or there could be an issue with one of her brothers. "Or she might be afraid we'll break our promise about visiting," Rachel suggested. "I never got to tell her about the postponement. I've cleared my schedule for our visit at 3:30 today." Melissa assured her, "Let's proceed as planned. If Isla isn't in school tomorrow either, we'll elevate this to an urgent welfare check." The remainder of the day dragged on, each hour amplifying Rachel's worry. When the final bell rang, she hurried to meet Melissa in the parking lot, clutching a bag of groceries she'd purchased during her lunch break. "Ready?" Melissa asked as Rachel climbed into her car. The counselor had a folder of paperwork beside her and a determined expression. "More than ready," Rachel confirmed. 462 Maple Street, the gray house with the broken steps. As they drove, Melissa outlined the protocol for the visit. "I'll lead the conversation since I'm the official representative. We'll assess the living conditions, check on all 3 children, and determine what immediate assistance is needed. Our priority is their safety, but we'll aim for the least disruptive intervention possible." Rachel nodded, though her thoughts were on Isla's fearful plea. "Promise not to separate us." The system wasn't designed to keep sibling groups together, especially with such an age range. If the children entered foster care, they would likely be split up, a devastating outcome for a 6-year-old who had devoted herself to protecting her brothers. Maple Street appeared even more run down in the bright afternoon light. They parked in front of the small gray house, its peeling paint and overgrown yard, a stark contrast to the better-maintained homes nearby. "Remember, let me lead," Melissa said as they approached the broken front steps. Rachel nodded, her heart pounding as Melissa knocked firmly on the door. No response came. She knocked again, louder. "Isla," Rachel called. "It's Ms. Morgan and Ms. Clark from school. We've come to visit like we discussed." Silence answered them. Melissa tried the doorknob, but it was locked. "Let's check around back," she suggested. They walked around the side of the house where Rachel noticed a small garden patch with struggling tomato plants in makeshift containers, evidence of Isla's efforts to grow food. The backyard was bare except for a weathered plastic tricycle lying on its side. The back door was also locked, but through a window with a torn curtain, they could see into a small kitchen. Dishes were stacked neatly on a counter, and a baby bottle sat in a bowl of water. "Someone's definitely living here," Melissa observed. She knocked on the back door and called out again. Just as they were about to give up, a faint sound came from inside, a whimper that might have been a child or might have been something else. "Did you hear that?" Rachel asked, pressing her ear to the door. Melissa nodded, her expression grave. "That changes things. If there's a possibility of children in distress inside, we have cause to enter." She pulled out her phone and made a quick call to her supervisor, explaining the situation and requesting permission for emergency entry. After a brief conversation, she hung up. "We're authorized to check on the welfare of the children," she told Rachel. "Stand back." Using a small tool from her bag, Melissa managed to jimmy the simple lock on the back door. It swung open with a creak. "Hello," Isla, is anyone home? Melissa called as they stepped cautiously into the kitchen. We're from Willow Creek Elementary. We're here to help. The house was eerily quiet except for that same faint whimpering sound, now clearly coming from upstairs. The kitchen was clean but bare. Few dishes, an ancient refrigerator, cupboards with doors hanging from broken hinges. A box of crackers and a nearly empty jar of peanut butter sat on the counter. They moved through a small living room containing only a worn couch and a pile of blankets neatly folded in one corner. No television, no toys, none of the usual trappings of family life. Upstairs, Rachel whispered, pointing toward a narrow staircase where the whimpering grew louder. As they climbed the creaking steps, Rachel's heart pounded with dread and hope. Dread at what they might find, hope that they weren't too late to help. The sound led them to a small bedroom at the end of a short hallway. When they pushed open the door, the scene inside stopped them both in their tracks. 3 small figures huddled together on a bare mattress on the floor. Isla sat in the middle, her blue dress wrinkled and stained, her face flushed with what appeared to be fever. In her arms, she cradled a whimpering infant wrapped in a clean but threadbare blanket. Pressed against her side was a small boy with tousled brown hair and wide, frightened eyes. Noah, Rachel presumed. Guardian, the one-eyed teddy bear, stood propped against the wall, positioned as if watching over them all. Isla, Rachel breathed, rushing forward. We were so worried when you didn't come to school. The little girl looked up, her eyes glassy with fever. I couldn't leave them, she whispered. Liam was crying all night, and Noah has a cough. As if on cue, the small boy coughed, a dry, hacking sound that made Rachel wince. Melissa knelt beside the mattress, her professional demeanor softening as she took in the scene. Hello, Isla. I'm Ms. Clark from your school. We've come to help you and your brothers. Isla pulled the baby closer, her fevered eyes darting between the 2 women. Are you going to take us away, separate us, right now? Right. We're just here to make sure you're all okay, Melissa said gently. Can I check on the baby? After a moment's hesitation, Isla allowed Melissa to examine Liam. The infant was small for what looked to be about 6 months of age, his cheeks sunken slightly, but his eyes were alert, and he showed no immediate signs of serious illness. Rachel sat beside Noah, who coughed again and leaned against her, seeking comfort from this stranger with an instinct born of desperate need. How long has your mom been gone, Isla? Melissa asked, her voice carefully neutral as she continued checking Liam. 73 days, Isla answered immediately. I mark the calendar in the kitchen every night. Rachel and Melissa exchanged a glance. Over 2 months these children had been surviving alone. Where did she go? Rachel asked gently. The White Building, where sick people go to get better. Isla's voice was matter-of-fact, though her hands trembled slightly as she stroked Liam's wisps of hair. She said she'd come back when her brain stopped telling her bad things, but she hasn't yet. A mental health facility, Rachel realized. The mother had been institutionalized, and somehow these children had fallen through the cracks of the system. The lady in the white coat said someone would check on us, Isla continued, her words slightly slurred from fever. But nobody came, so I had to take care of everything. You've done an amazing job, Isla, Rachel said, her heart breaking at the burden this small child had carried. But you're sick now and you all need help. I'm okay, Isla insisted, though she swayed slightly where she sat. I just need to rest a little, and then I can make dinner for Noah and Liam. Melissa had completed her initial assessment of the baby and moved on to Noah, who allowed her to check his temperature with a forehead thermometer. 101.3, she reported quietly to Rachel. He needs medical attention soon. Rachel nodded, then turned back to Isla. Sweetheart, how are you feeling? You look like you have a fever too. I'm fine, Isla repeated. Stubbornly, but tears welled in her eyes. I have to be fine. If I'm not, who will take care of them? The simple question, delivered with such childlike certainty of responsibility, nearly broke Rachel's composure. That's what we're here for, Isla. To help all of you. Melissa stepped into the hallway to make a phone call, leaving Rachel with the children. Noah had fallen asleep against her side, his breathing slightly labored. Liam fussed quietly in Isla's arms. He's hungry, Isla explained, her own exhaustion evident in every line of her small body. But the formula is almost gone. I tried to make it last longer by adding more water, but then he cries more. Rachel reached for the bag of groceries she'd brought, extracting a can of formula. I brought some food for all of you. Would it be okay if I prepare a bottle for Liam? Relief flooded Isla's face as she nodded. For the first time, she voluntarily handed the baby to Rachel, a gesture of trust that spoke volumes. In the kitchen, as Rachel prepared the formula, Melissa rejoined her. I've called for medical transport, she said quietly. All 3 children need to be evaluated at the hospital. I've also contacted Emergency Foster Placement Services. Foster placement, Rachel repeated, her stomach clenching. They'll be separated, Melissa. We promised Isla. I know, Melissa interrupted gently, but we have to follow protocol. 3 different age groups means 3 different placement types, at least. Initially, Rachel glanced toward the stairs, thinking of the solemn promise she'd made to a desperate child. There has to be another way, she insisted. These children have only had each other for months. Separating them now would be traumatic. Unless you know someone willing to take all 3. Emergency placement, Melissa began, then stopped as she saw the expression on Rachel's face. Actually, Rachel said slowly, an idea forming. I might know someone. The bottle prepared, she carried it back upstairs, her mind racing with possibilities and pitfalls. As she handed the formula to Isla, who insisted on feeding Liam herself despite her illness, Rachel made a silent vow that somehow these children would stay together, whatever it took. The ambulance arrived quietly, without sirens or flashing lights, a small mercy Rachel had requested to avoid frightening the children further. 2 paramedics, a kind-faced woman named Sarah, and a gentle giant of a man called Marcus, climbed the narrow stairs to the bedroom where the Thompson children waited. Hello there, Sarah said, kneeling beside the mattress. I hear you haven't been feeling well. We're going to take you somewhere that can help you feel better. Isla's eyes widened with fear. She clutched Liam tighter and reached for Noah's hand. All of us? Together? All of you together, Marcus confirmed, his deep voice surprisingly soft. No one gets left behind. As the paramedics prepared the children for transport, Rachel pulled Melissa aside. I need to make a call, she whispered. Can you stay with them while I step outside? On the front porch, Rachel dialed a number she knew by heart. Her hands trembled slightly as she waited for an answer. Margaret, it's Rachel Morgan. I need your help with something. Something big. Margaret Peterson had been Rachel's mentor when she first started teaching at Willow Creek Elementary 15 years ago. Now retired after a 40-year career, Margaret was still a force in the community, respected, connected, and known for her unwavering advocacy for children in need. Rachel quickly explained the situation with the Thompson children, her words tumbling out with desperate urgency. So you see, she concluded, they need emergency placement tonight after they're checked at the hospital, and they need to stay together. I know it's a lot to ask. I'll meet you at Willow Creek General in 30 minutes, Margaret interrupted, her decisive tone brooking no argument. Don't worry about anything else right now. Relief washed over Rachel. If anyone could navigate the system and find a way to keep the children together, it was Margaret. Back inside, the paramedics had wrapped all 3 children in warm blankets. Isla sat on the edge of the mattress, swaying slightly with fever, but refusing to lie down on the stretcher until her brothers were taken care of. We need to bring a few things, she insisted, her voice weak but determined. Guardian watches over everyone, and Noah needs his green blanket or he can't sleep. We'll bring everything important, Rachel assured her, gathering the worn teddy bear and the faded green blanket. She quickly located a diaper bag with Liam's few belongings and a small backpack that apparently contained all of Noah's and Isla's clothes. The meager possessions of 3 children fit into 2 small bags, a stark testament to their poverty. As they carefully carried the children downstairs, Isla suddenly grabbed Rachel's arm. "Wait," she whispered urgently. "The calendar in the kitchen, we have to mark today or we'll lose count." Understanding the importance of this ritual to Isla, Rachel detoured to the kitchen. On the wall hung a faded calendar, with X marks methodically drawn through each day. The last marked day was yesterday, day 73 of their mother's absence. "I'll mark it for you," Rachel said, finding a pencil on the counter. She carefully drew an X through today's date, day 74. "There, now we haven't lost count." Isla nodded weakly, apparently satisfied that this crucial responsibility had been fulfilled. Outside, neighbors had begun to gather, drawn by the unusual sight of an ambulance on their quiet street. An elderly woman approached as they loaded the children into the vehicle. "Are those the Thompson children?" she asked, wringing her hands. "I had no idea they were alone. I saw the little girl hanging laundry sometimes, but I thought their mother was just working." "You knew them?" Rachel asked. "Not really," the woman admitted, shame clouding her features. "I waved to the girl once or twice. She was always so busy, carrying groceries or the baby. I should have checked, should have asked." Rachel recognized the guilt in the woman's eyes, the same guilt that had haunted her own dreams since she first suspected something was wrong with Isla. How many people had seen signs but looked away? How many opportunities for help had been missed? At the hospital, Rachel and Melissa accompanied the children to the pediatric emergency department. Doctors and nurses moved efficiently around them, checking vital signs, drawing blood, asking questions that Isla tried valiantly to answer despite her increasing disorientation. "She's severely dehydrated and malnourished," a doctor informed them quietly. "The boys too, though not as critically. It looks like she's been sacrificing her own needs for theirs." "Will they be okay?" Rachel asked, watching as nurses inserted an IV into Isla's thin arm. The little girl didn't even wince, as if physical discomfort was so familiar it no longer registered. "With proper care, yes," the doctor assured her. "But they'll need time to recover, especially Isla. Her body is showing signs of prolonged stress and malnutrition." As promised, Margaret arrived 30 minutes later, a whirlwind of efficient energy despite her 70 years. She hugged Rachel briefly, then immediately began conferring with Melissa about emergency placement options. Rachel sat beside Isla's hospital bed, holding her hand as the little girl drifted in and out of consciousness. In one lucid moment, Isla's fingers tightened around Rachel's. "You came," she whispered. "You really came to help." "Yes, sweetheart," Rachel said, blinking. Back tears. "And I'm not going anywhere." "Promise?" Isla murmured, her eyelids growing heavy as medication pulled her toward sleep. "I promise," Rachel said firmly, and this time she knew it was a promise she would move heaven and earth to keep. The pediatric wing of Willow Creek General Hospital was designed to feel less intimidating than a typical medical facility. Colorful murals of forests and animals decorated the walls, and the nurses wore scrubs printed with cheerful patterns instead of stark white. Still, it was clearly a hospital, with its distinctive antiseptic smell and the steady beeping of monitors. In a private room, the Thompson children had been settled into beds positioned close together at Rachel's insistence. Isla occupied the standard hospital bed, while Noah and Liam had been placed in special pediatric cribs with their sides lowered so Isla could see them clearly from her position. Though the doctors had wanted to separate them for specialized care in different departments, Rachel and Margaret had advocated fiercely for keeping them together, arguing that emotional security was as important as physical treatment after what they'd endured. Their vital signs actually improved when they could see each other, Margaret had pointed out to the skeptical head nurse. Separating them now would cause unnecessary trauma. Outside in the hallway, Rachel, Margaret, and Melissa huddled in conversation with Dr. Rivera, the pediatrician assigned to all three children. Physically, they're in better condition than I would have expected given the circumstances, Dr. Rivera explained, reviewing her notes. Isla shows signs of extended malnutrition and exhaustion. Her swollen abdomen is primarily due to vitamin deficiencies and fluid retention from poor nutrition. Noah has a respiratory infection that we're treating with antibiotics, but it's responding well. Baby Liam is underweight but otherwise stable. What about their mother? Melissa asked. Isla mentioned she was in a white building for mental health treatment. Dr. Rivera nodded. We're working with county services to locate her. Based on Isla's timeline of 74 days, and assuming she's counting accurately, the mother would have been admitted somewhere in late March. That poor child was counting each day her mother was gone, Rachel said softly, marking the calendar. Every night, keeping track while trying to care for two young children. It's remarkable what she managed to accomplish, Dr. Rivera agreed. The house was clean, the children were dressed, and basic needs were being met, however minimally. Most adults would struggle with what she took on. What happens to them now? Rachel asked, voicing the question that had been weighing on her since they'd discovered the children's situation. Melissa sighed, the bureaucratic reality clearly troubling her. Standard procedure would be temporary emergency foster placement while we locate the mother and assess her fitness to resume custody. Given their age differences, they would typically be placed in separate homes. That can't happen, Rachel said firmly. Isla has dedicated herself to keeping them together. Separating them would devastate her, especially after all she's sacrificed. Margaret, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. I might have a solution. I've been certified as an emergency foster parent for the past 15 years. My house has 3 bedrooms, a fenced yard, and I'm home full-time. I could take all 3 children, at least temporarily. Rachel turned to her former mentor with gratitude shining in her eyes. She had hoped Margaret would offer, but hadn't dared ask directly for such an enormous commitment. That would be highly unusual, Melissa cautioned. Even certified foster parents rarely take sibling groups of 3, especially with an infant involved. I raised 4 children of my own, including twins, Margaret replied with a hint of steel beneath her grandmotherly exterior. I've fostered over 30 children in the past decade. If anyone is qualified for this situation, I am. While the adults discussed logistics in the hallway, Rachel slipped back into the children's room. Isla was awake, her fever reduced by medication and IV fluids. She sat propped against pillows, her eyes fixed anxiously on her sleeping brothers. They're okay, Rachel assured her, settling into the chair beside the bed. The doctors are taking good care of all of you. When can we go home? Isla asked, her small voice hollow with exhaustion. Rachel chose her words carefully. You need to stay in the hospital for a little while until you're stronger. After that, we're working on finding a good place for all of you to stay together. Not back to our house? Not right away, sweetheart. Isla's fingers worried at the edge of her blanket. Is it because I didn't do a good enough job? I tried really hard. I made sure Noah brushed his teeth and Liam had clean diapers. I only took food from the store when Mr. Jenkins said it was okay. The child's concern that her superhuman efforts might have somehow been insufficient broke Rachel's heart. Isla, look at me, she said gently, waiting until the girl's troubled eyes met hers. You did an amazing job taking care of your brothers, better than most grown-ups could have done. This isn't happening. Because you did anything wrong. Then why can't we go home? Because children need grown-ups to help take care of them. That's how it's supposed to be. You've been carrying a burden that was never yours to carry alone. Isla considered this, her small face solemn. Is my mom coming back soon? We're trying to find out where she is and how she's doing, Rachel answered honestly. Until then, we want to make sure you and your brothers are safe and have everything you need. Together? Isla pressed, the word carrying the weight of her deepest fear. Together, Rachel confirmed. I promised. You that, remember? And I meant it. For the first time since they'd entered the hospital, Isla's rigid posture relaxed slightly. She leaned back against her pillows, her eyelids growing heavy. "Will you stay until I fall asleep?" she murmured. "Guardian is tired of watching by himself." Rachel gently tucked the teddy bear into the crook of Isla's arm. "Guardian can rest now," she said softly. "I'll be right here, watching over all of you." As Isla drifted off to sleep, Rachel sat vigilant beside her bed, silently renewing her promise that somehow these children would find the security and love they deserved, together. 3 days passed in the pediatric wing of Willow Creek General, days of gradual healing and cautious hope. Noah's cough improved with antibiotics, and Liam gained several ounces with proper formula and care. Isla, however, recovered more slowly, her small body struggling to rebuild what months of sacrifice had depleted. "Her system is in a state of exhaustion," Dr. Rivera explained during morning rounds. "She's been running on emergency reserves for too long." Despite her physical weakness, Isla remained vigilant, her eyes constantly tracking her brother's whereabouts and conditions. She insisted on helping feed Liam when nurses brought his bottle, and reminded the staff about Noah's green blanket when they changed his bedding. "You can rest now, Isla," Rachel reminded her gently during one of her daily visits after school. "The nurses are taking good care of Noah and Liam." "I need to make sure," Isla insisted, though dark circles still shadowed her eyes. "It's my responsibility." On the 4th morning, Rachel arrived to find Isla sitting up in bed, looking more alert than she had since their arrival at the hospital. Margaret was already there, having brought picture books for Noah and a soft toy for Liam. "Good news," Margaret announced as Rachel entered. "The paperwork has been approved. Once the children are discharged, they'll be coming to stay with me, all 3 together." Relief washed over Rachel. Melissa had worked tirelessly to push the unusual arrangement through bureaucratic channels, and Margaret had spent hours preparing her home for 3 young children with very different needs. "Did you hear that, Isla?" Rachel asked, sitting on the edge of the hospital bed. "You and your brothers will be staying with Mrs. Peterson when you leave the hospital." Isla looked uncertainly at Margaret, then back to Rachel. "All of us? In the same house?" "All of you," Margaret confirmed with a warm smile. "I have a bedroom ready for you and Noah, with a special crib nearby for Liam." For the first time in days, a small spark lit in Isla's eyes. "Can Guardian come too?" "Guardian will have a special place right next to your pillow," Margaret assured her, "and Ms. Morgan can visit you every day after school." The door opened as a nurse brought in breakfast trays for the children. The sudden movement startled Liam, who began to fuss in his crib. Without thinking, Isla swung her legs over the side of the bed and stood to reach him. "I'll get him," she said automatically, but as she took a step, her face suddenly drained of color. "I feel funny," she whispered, swaying dangerously. Rachel lunged forward, just as Isla's knees buckled. She caught the little girl before she hit the floor, cradling her against her chest, as she called urgently for help. Isla, can you hear me?" The child's eyes fluttered weakly. "The baby's crying," she murmured, her voice fading. I have to go to—" "It's okay," Rachel soothed, her heart pounding with fear as medical staff rushed into the room. "Everyone is safe. You can rest now." Isla's small fingers clutched at Rachel's sleeve with surprising strength. "If I close my eyes," she whispered, "they'll cry again and no one will hear them." "I hear them now, Isla," Rachel promised, tears blurring her vision as the little girl's hand went limp in hers. "We all hear them now." Dr. Rivera arrived moments later, quickly assessing Isla's condition as nurses moved the other children to a nearby room. "Her blood pressure's dropping," the doctor said tersely. "She's going into shock." As medical personnel worked urgently around the small, still form on the bed, Rachel stood frozen at the doorway, one thought echoing in her mind. After everything this child had survived, after all she had sacrificed for her brothers, would she finally collapse now that help had arrived? The irony would be too cruel to bear. Hours ticked by in the hospital waiting room as Rachel and Margaret sat side by side, hands clasped in silent support. Melissa had arrived shortly after Isla's collapse, bringing coffee and staying to watch over Noah. And Liam while the women waited for news. Family of Isla Thompson? A tired-looking Dr. Rivera finally appeared, still wearing surgical scrubs. Rachel and Margaret rose immediately. Though not technically family, they had become Isla's advocates and protectors in a world that had failed her. She's stabilized, Dr. Rivera announced, relief evident in her voice. It was touch and go for a while. Her body simply shut down. The combination of long-term malnutrition, stress, and the sudden relaxation of her vigilance created a perfect storm. But she'll recover? Rachel asked, her voice trembling. Yes, with time and proper care. We've had to place her on stronger IV nutrition and fluids. The tests confirm what we suspected. Her condition was more serious than it initially appeared. The swelling in her abdomen was primarily from fluid retention and malnutrition. Her little body was actually in the early stages of organ distress from trying to function without adequate resources. She was literally giving everything she had to her brothers, Margaret murmured. Dr. Rivera nodded solemnly. It appears so. We found evidence that she's been subsisting on minimal calories for weeks, probably saving most food for the younger children. What's remarkable is how she managed to keep the baby relatively healthy through it all. When can we see her? Rachel asked. She's in recovery now. You can see her briefly in about 30 minutes, though she'll be sedated. As they waited, a commotion at the hospital entrance caught their attention. A young woman from the local news station was setting up a camera, while behind her several people carried boxes and bags. What's happening? Rachel asked a passing nurse. Word got out about the Thompson children, the nurse explained. The community is responding. Those boxes are donations, clothes, toys, supplies. The station ran a segment about 3 children found living alone, and people have been calling all day asking how to help. Rachel and Margaret exchanged surprised glances. The private struggle of 3 forgotten children had suddenly become a community concern. By evening, Isla had been moved to a special room in the pediatric intensive care unit. Though still sedated, her condition had stabilized enough that Noah and Liam were allowed brief visits, carefully supervised by the medical staff. Rachel stood at the window, watching as a nurse gently placed baby Liam beside his sister for a few minutes. Even unconscious, Isla seemed to sense his presence. Her breathing evened, and the monitors showed her heart rate stabilizing. She responds to them even now, Margaret observed quietly, joining Rachel at the window. The connection between them is extraordinary. Outside the hospital, the community of Willow Creek continued to mobilize. Mr. Jenkins, the market owner who had sometimes helped Isla with extra food, organized a donation drive among local businesses. The elementary school's PTA arranged meals for Margaret's home once the children were discharged. 3 teenage girls from the high school volunteered to help with babysitting. By the next morning, Isla showed signs of waking. Her eyelids fluttered, and her fingers twitched restlessly against the white hospital sheets. "Guardian," she murmured. Her first word as consciousness returned. Rachel, who had spent the night in a chair beside the bed, immediately placed the teddy bear in Isla's searching hands. "He's right here, sweetheart. He's been watching over you." Isla's eyes opened slowly, confusion giving way to recognition as she focused on Rachel's face. "My brothers," she whispered hoarsely. "They're fine, Isla. Noah's cough is much better, and Liam has gained weight. They're just down the hall with Mrs. Peterson." The little girl's face crumpled suddenly, tears welling in her eyes. "I fell down. I couldn't help them." "Oh, Isla," Rachel said gently, carefully gathering the child into a tender embrace, mindful of the IV lines. "You've helped them more than anyone could have asked, but now it's time to let others help all of you." "I thought I had to do it alone," Isla whispered against Rachel's shoulder. "I thought if anyone found out they'd take them away from me." "Never," Rachel promised, stroking the child's tangled hair. "You 3 belong together, and now you have a whole community of people who want to make sure of that." Outside the window, the first golden light of dawn broke over Willow Creek, illuminating a world that suddenly seemed full of possibilities, where before there had been only desperate survival. For the first time in 75 days, Isla Thompson closed her eyes without fear, knowing that when she opened them again, her brothers would still be there, and so would the people who had finally heard their silent cries for help. 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Margaret's cozy Victorian home buzzed with activity. In the sunny living room, transformed now with colorful rugs and child-sized furniture, Rachel sat cross-legged on a reading carpet surrounded by bright cushions. Noah, now nearly 5, snuggled against her side while she held a picture book where both he and Isla could see the illustrations. And the smallest bear said, "Someone's been sleeping in my bed, and she's still there," Rachel read, giving the line a squeaky voice that made Noah giggle. From her position on a cushion across from them, Isla smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes, no longer shadowed with exhaustion or worry. At 7 months, baby Liam practiced sitting up nearby, supported by pillows and watched over by Guardian, the one-eyed teddy bear now sporting a hand-knitted sweater made by Mrs. Jenkins from the market. The changes in all 3 children over the past months had been remarkable. Noah's vocabulary had exploded once he began preschool, his naturally bubbly personality emerging from the shell of quiet wariness he'd developed. Liam had transformed from a solemn, underweight infant to a chubby, babbling baby who reached eagerly for anyone who entered the room. But the most profound change was in Isla. Proper nutrition had filled out her once hollow cheeks, and regular sleep had erased the dark circles under her eyes. The swelling in her abdomen had disappeared completely once her body received the nutrients it needed. Dr. Rivera had explained during a follow-up visit that what they had initially observed was the combined effect of malnutrition, fluid retention, and physical stress, a little body pushed far beyond its limits. More important than the physical changes, however, was the gradual lightening of the invisible weight Isla had carried. Week by week, she had slowly surrendered her self-imposed responsibilities, allowing Margaret to take over the caregiving duties she had shouldered alone for so long. There had been setbacks, of course. Nightmares where she woke panicked, certain her brothers were crying and no one could hear them. Days when she followed Margaret anxiously from room to room, checking that Liam was fed properly or that Noah had his green blanket for nap time. But slowly, with patience and gentle reassurance, Isla was learning to be a child again. The legal situation had resolved more smoothly than anyone dared hope. Caroline Thompson had indeed been hospitalized for severe depression and psychosis following the death of the children's father, a detail Isla had never mentioned, perhaps not fully, understanding it herself. Upon her release, Caroline had been devastated to learn what had happened in her absence, the system having completely failed to provide the follow-up care promised for her children. Rather than rushing to reunite the family, Caroline had made the painful but loving decision to allow Margaret to maintain temporary guardianship while she completed an intensive outpatient treatment program and parenting classes. She visited regularly, rebuilding her relationship with her children in the safe, supportive environment Margaret provided. As Rachel finished the story, the doorbell rang. Margaret appeared from the kitchen, wiping flour from her hands. "That must be our visitors," she announced with a smile. The door opened to reveal Melissa, accompanied by several children from Isla's class at school, including Emma Wilson, bearing homemade cards and a small, potted plant. "We wanted to invite Isla to Emma's birthday party next weekend," one of the mothers explained. "The whole class will be there." Isla looked up hesitantly, still sometimes shy around other children, but Emma stepped forward confidently, offering the plant. "It's a tomato seedling," she explained. "I remembered you're good at growing things." For a moment, Isla seemed frozen in surprise at this acknowledgement of something she was good at, something beyond the desperate caretaking that had defined her young life for so long. Then she rose and carefully took the plant, a smile blooming across her face. "Thank you," she said softly. I can show you how to make it grow really tall." As the children chattered excitedly, Rachel moved to stand beside Margaret in the doorway, watching the scene with quiet joy. "I think," Margaret said softly, "this is what healing looks like." Rachel nodded, her eyes misting slightly as she watched Isla sit down on the carpet, cross-legged and completely relaxed, to examine the plant with her new friends. Behind her, Noah played with building blocks while Liam babbled happily in his little seat. For the first time since Rachel had noticed, the little girl who wouldn't sit down, Isla Thompson looked entirely like what she was meant to be all along. Simply a child, free to grow, learn, and play, unburdened by adult worries, surrounded by people who would ensure she never had to stand alone again.